Hi, lovely. I'm Bex, and welcome to the Calm Code. Before we dive into your 7 days of nervous system and somatic practices, I want to give you a quick grounding in how your nervous system actually works. By the end of this little masterclass, you'll have a whole new lens for understanding yourself, and everything you do over the next 7 days will start to click and make deep embodied sense. So, take a deep breath. Let's begin.
Let's get started by talking about, first and foremost, some of the red flags that your nervous system will send to you when it isn't feeling super regulated, when it's craving some kind of soothing and regulation, because often we miss these things. So here are some weirdly specific signs from your body that your nervous system is seeking regulation. First up, we have things like gut issues, so digestive problems, and that might be bloating, that might be the bowel movements that you experience, that might be sore tummies. So if you've got some ongoing stuff there, that can point to some nervous system dysregulation. Anxiety symptoms in the morning, so if we're feeling very anxious or tired and more wired at night. Some brain fog, poor memory. If you've got somatic symptoms like jaw clenching and teeth grinding, craving sugar, that immune system suppression of getting sick really easily. Fatigue, a puffy face, and physical aches and pains, often in the neck and the shoulders, and having tight hips and things like that, that seem to just hang around without any medical explanation as to why they're there. So all of these things can be symptoms and signs of a dysregulated nervous system, of a body that has got too much cortisol or is even going into adrenal fatigue, and of one that may have some stuck and unprocessed emotions, stress, and tension simmering under the surface, often in those unconscious layers and coming out and presenting in your body. And here are some weirdly specific signs from your behaviors that you didn't realize mean your nervous system is seeking regulation. You can't be bothered socializing, you're on at work, so maybe you're running your business or you're showing up and you're smiling, and then when you finish for the day, when you get home, you just slump. Often this leads us into the dopamine chasing. So we might be doom scrolling, spending way more time on reels than we would like to be, perhaps binge watching Netflix, online shopping, all of those things that is our body seeking those little hits of feel-good hormones and chemicals in the body. It could mean that you space out a lot more. So if you've ever experienced pulling up in your driveway after work and just not being able to get out of the car, getting out of the shower, wrapping your towel around you, haven't decided what to wear, so you sit on the bed and stare at the wall for 15 minutes. You may also sensory seek or avoid. So sensory seeking is stuff like noticing that you're fidgeting a lot or picking skin on your lips or your hair. It might be that you sway a lot, those types of things, or again, the dopamine chasing. And then sensory avoidance is when you just feel so overloaded by the sounds and your textures of your clothes and things like that, and you're trying to get away from that. You might fantasize about escape, a sign of the body being in a flight response, trips, other lives, getting away, winning the lotto, all of those things, over shopping, overspending. And here's one for the fawn response people or the people pleasers, is picking up on everyone else's energy and emotions. So if you feel drained after socializing, this is a bit of a sign of some dysregulation going on. So what does this even mean? What's dysregulation? What's the nervous system? We're going to peel through this and explain and give you a good summary of that. So you have something called an autonomic nervous system, and this nervous system has these two branches to it. You've got your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. And let's just break those states down a little bit here. Sympathetic is your fight and flight. And really what it is just activation and mobilization. So you may have heard of this sympathetic system. It's sort of a stress response. It's really just getting you going and getting you active. And then we've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which many of you may just associate as rest, digest, and restore, and just that calm part of your nervous system. Actually, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and it has these layers to it. The first is a branch called ventral vagal, and this is talking about your vagus nerve. We'll come to this soon. That is the calm and connected. This is the prime space to be, where you feel creative, you feel compassionate, you feel energized. The other branch of your parasympathetic system is called dorsal vagal. And this is our oldest and most primitive threat state, and it may be referred to as shutdown or freeze. Many of us are actually quite familiar with a state that's a blend of sympathetic and dorsal called functional freeze, where we're kind of lacking in motivation, feeling very stuck and slumping, and then we're racing and trying to get the to-do list done, or feeling like there's so much to do that we just can't get going and get stuck again. So really, just when we feel threatened or under stress in any way, our nervous system's going to respond by putting us into one of these threat states. This is unconscious, and this influences your behavior and your thoughts, and it also hijacks your ability to kind of think really rationally and logically. So you're either going to go into fight or flight. So that's that more aggression or feeling irritable all the time and just short and snappy with your kids and partner, or more of a flight, feeling like you've just got to keep going, get things done. You're feeling anxious, you're feeling panicky. And then we may go into more of the freeze state of feeling really stuck and down and low. So the whole thing is a little bit like a car. So think of your sympathetic nervous system as pushing down the accelerator, so getting you going, getting you away from something or hooning towards something. It's the movement piece. And then if we were to kind of go, oh, I need to just chill everything down, I'm safe, we'd slowly put on the foot brake, and that's ventral vagal. That's the vagus nerve putting the brake on, slowing down the stress, bringing all the levels down. And then dorsal vagal is much more unregulated, and it's like ripping up the handbrake. It's like Control Alt Delete on your computer. Oh my God, it's all too much. The threat's too overwhelming. I cannot cope with the stress. Running away from it's not an option. Fighting it's not an option. I'm just going to shut everything down. So that's how that works, like a car. And it's actually, we're not demonizing any of this. So it's actually just very functional, sometimes to feel a bit stuck and frozen and to turn inward. Sometimes it's very appropriate to be in a stress response in order to respond to a challenge. What's not so helpful is when we end up in a dominant stress state, or we get stuck in these places. And your nervous system makes predictions about the future based on what it's known in the past, and it responds very reflexively, which means it's outside of conscious choosing. So it might be that you cognitively try stress management techniques, or you try to, change your mindset, things like that. And sometimes that helps to a degree. And it's definitely not to say that talk therapy or mindset work isn't useful. It is so useful. And it's a big piece of the puzzle that I do. But if you're missing the aspect of regulating your nervous system, that is often through somatic practices that speak that language of the body and that unconscious language of the nervous system, then you'll miss a piece of the puzzle because you'll keep reflexively responding from one of these states. So if you've been through trauma or tricky stuff in your past, or you've just been under a lot of stress and you haven't found ways to process and manage that, next time you're faced with a stressor, you're just going to automatically revert back into fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. Fawn is people pleasing. It's a bit of a mixed state, but let's keep moving. So this is something we're not going to spend much time on, just to show you how this kind of works. This is called polyvagal theory. When we are down the bottom there in social engagement, that's ventral vagal. That's that branch where we just feel joyful and present and curious and compassionate and all those things. The best place to operate from for our businesses, our relationships, our creativity, all of that. When the arousal increases, or when stress increases, when something in your life feels threatening, and that could be a very real threat, like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money for the bills this week, or that could be worries and what ifs that aren't real or happening in this moment, it moves us out and into fight flight. And then if all of that gets too much, we come into freeze. So briefly on the vagus nerve, your vagus nerve is your 10th cranial nerve that wanders from the base of your brain, and it connects and innervates a lot of areas in your body. It's the main nerve fiber system of your parasympathetic nervous system. Let's just, for ease, call that the rest and digest, calm place. So your vagus nerve is what allows you to come back into calm and connection. And this vagus nerve is an incredible two-way information highway that connects your brain to your body, so your nervous system. 80% of that information is being carried from the body up to the brain. And so that's why we often miss the mark if we just do the cognitive only methods, because our body, is sending all these unconscious signals all the time about how safe we feel. Your vagus nerve also aids digestion and your metabolism. It helps put the brake on to lower your heart rate when you're stressed, calms anxiety, reduces inflammation in the body, and increases blood flow to organs. And your vagus nerve actually has a tone, a level of tone. And it's true that actually, if we've had a lot of chronic stress, we can lose the tone of our vagus nerve, and we can also do things that activate it and tone it again. So high vagal tone, which we measure through HRV, you may have seen those little rings that measure your heart rate variability. Your high tone is associated with happiness, feeling balanced and content and being resilient. And low tone is that difficulty regulating your emotions. It's the anxiety, low mood, and stress. So let's move into, how do we get to know our own nervous system state? How do we even figure out if we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? Here's a really simplified tool that you could try, and it's simply just to check in with yourself and then rate on a scale of 1 to 10. How does my body feel? So somatic, stuff that you can feel in the body. If it's at a 5, we're just right. If it's closer to the 10, that's when if your body feels quite panicky and fidgety and jittery and tense and things like that. And if it's closer to the 1, maybe it feels quite slumped and tired and numb and wanting sleep. Same thing with your thoughts. Can you rate those on a scale of 1 to 10? At a 5, your thoughts are feeling pretty peaceful and calm and to make sense of them. If they're more at the 10, are they quite panicky, racy? You've got this to-do list, this rumination that won't stop. Or if they're at a 1, are they kind of slow and spacey and I just can't get my brain into gear? So one thing you can do to get to know your state is simply to rate it. So as we look at those nervous system states, if we're up at that kind of 10 mark, this is probably indicating a sympathetic fight flight. If we're closer to a 1, it might be showing us a bit more of a dorsal vagal freeze, shut down, and then 5's obviously our ventral vagal, calm and connected. So just to say very briefly here, yes, it's more nuanced than just this. You can be in a mixed state. So it might be that you're feeling racy in your body, but also feeling stuck and slow and spacey. So that's a functional freeze state, or also your fawn state, your people pleasing. That's a mixed state too. Basically, it's like having your foot down on the accelerator and the handbrake up at the same time. But this just gives you a very kind of brief idea of how you could maybe figure out your state. And then what we need to do, and now we're getting into the tools, is to match a tool, a regulating tool, to your state. And this is what a lot of people miss because we might be feeling angry. So we think, I'm going to take some deep breaths, make myself, meditate here. We might be feeling anxious and we try to do the same. I'm going to go meditate for 5 minutes. Have you ever found that you've tried that and it just doesn't work? Like your mind is still racing. You still feel totally wound up. Actually, sometimes you even feel worse. And often this is because we are mismatching a tool that doesn't really fit the nervous system state that we're in. So we can get really smart about how we use our tools. And really, it's all about play, getting curious and playing with the tools. But from a basic standpoint, we're either going to need to up-regulate the system, down-regulate, or we're going to need to do something that completes the stress response first before we can regulate. So why would we upregulate? What does that mean? If you are in freeze, so that's dorsal vagal, feeling a little bit more like, I just cannot get going. It's all helpless, hopeless, I'm doom scrolling. I've got no energy. We're going to need to bring ourselves up. We're going to need to bring regulation up, energy up. If you're really anxious, worried, irritable, it's stress, it's tension, we want to down regulate. But that completion of the stress response, this is the part that most people totally miss, what I mentioned before about when you meditate, it just doesn't work, is that when you are in that anxious, angry place, sometimes your body, you need to follow that energy of your body to move it through, to move the stress through, to complete the stress response before you can find your calm again.
And that's it, my love. You've just learned the foundations of your nervous system. Now, as you move through the Calm Code practices, you'll start to feel this knowledge in your body, not just understand it. And if after these 7 days you feel ready to go deeper, you can explore the Nervous System Reset course or join us inside the Journey to Wellness membership, where we keep expanding this work together. For now, take a deep breath, soften your shoulders, and get ready to begin your 7 days of calm.